Alrighty guys, well today we're on the second rental car. The first one was the Nissan Rogue, and now there is a 2018 Subaru Forester. So the actual windshield was replaced, so now it was time for the radio. So Subaru did provide a loaner car, as the 2017 Outback needs a new head unit again. So this is now a 2018 Forester, like I just said, and I have to admit my first driving experiences are a little bit funky. I do overall like the car, however, I will admit it's very interesting having eyesight as well as lane departure coming from a person who originally had a 2000 Honda Accord and now has a 2015 Elantra with no fancy gadgets. It's a little bit unsettling. So the engine is a 2.0 liter engine. It is a Boxer 4, so it does put out a certain amount of horsepower. I couldn't tell you how much, and it is mated to a CVT transmission. Now, this transmission in this car compared to, let's say, the Legacy and the Outback is a little bit different. It still simulates the shifts, but it does it much later into the carry. So for example, the 2017 Outback will start the shifting process at around 2,500 to 3,000 RPMs, whereas this car will utilize the pulleys and basically cause a direct drive feel up until about, let's say, 4,000, and then it will start to mimic shifting as we go. So as you can see, there's our next shift, and so on and so forth. Subaru still did a good job with this car in actually ensuring that they are crisp versus the Nissan Rogue, where the tachometer was flippy-flopping all over the place like a limp dick. So essentially, this car definitely a lot better, and the shifts are very firm. The actual simulation of shift shock is definitely present, versus in the Nissan, it was not present at all. Suspension-wise, this car obviously is a Subaru. Subarus have some of the best suspensions, and basically they are silent on any road due to the fact that they probably use polyurethane bushings instead of plastic to ensure that drivers get a comfortable yet quiet ride. The all-wheel drive system obviously will allow for smoothness. However, unfortunately, the all-wheel drive system will also sacrifice gas mileage because of the fact that now you have a transfer case, you have a bunch of extra parts that will be built into the subframe, which will actually cause the car to lose some mileage. However, with the pairing of the CVT transmission, Subaru basically was able to extend its gas mileage significantly due to the fact that they are no longer using a 4-speed automatic. As you can see though, the RPMs do run low and the car generally runs very quietly. I am actually on the 15 highway right now, and I literally am going to do this just because I can. The steering wheel is correcting me in the lane, and it will yell at you if you are unable to listen to the car. The car will actually be like, look it, I'm going into the next lane and I'm not really doing that unless you put your signal on. So the car does a really good job of that, and the eyesight is a little bit spooky to use. I'm not exactly very fond of it. We just tried out the adaptive cruise control and both of us kind of shat our pants. So with that, this car overall, like I said, the first driving impressions are good. However, it is not as good as the Legacy or the Outback. Price-wise, it is a little bit cheaper, but you are missing flappy paddles as well as a few items here and there that the Outback and the Legacy do provide. For example, one of them would be a sunglasses holder. This car does not actually have that, and ultimately, although the ride height is nice, it definitely feels like everything is very far away. For example, I have to really go down to the floor to get to the gear shift, and the radio itself seems a lot further away. Gear shift is all the way down there on the floor. It kind of feels like I'm driving a 5-speed transmission, but the shifter is all the way down. So like, for example, a really old truck. So it is a little bit different. It is a little bit more to adapt to just because the car itself doesn't make you feel like you're boxed in. It is a nice feature for those of you that are claustrophobic. However, we all know that the newer vehicles, you definitely get more of a boxy in feel, versus this car is very spacious, but almost too spacious to reach things in a comfortable manner. As you can see up here, if I do have the cruise control on, it will set the adaptive cruise control as well, and it will also show me how fast I am going, and the eyesight will tell me. Now, if I do turn the cruise control off completely, as you can see, we've got an analog clock with a digital clock as well as our MPGs on average. We also are able to change the display up in the center. However, if you notice, it is extraordinarily far away, and it actually is a bit unnerving. It kind of reminds me of an old Toyota Yaris, where the speedometer was literally in that position and the dashboard was completely empty here. So again, as you can see, lane departure is on, and if I do tend to drift off, the car will correct itself, and as you can see, it is correcting me back into the lane. Now, if I were to actually try to fight the car, for example, I'm not using my signal, the car will actually yell at me and say, look, get back in your lane. So it is a good feature to have. I mean, for those of you guys who do drive on a long drive, for example, and you do get tired behind the wheel, for example, if you are driving on the 405 in Los Angeles and you have to get home to Quartz Hill or Palmdale on the 14, you're going to be sitting in traffic for about 2 or 3 hours. So it's definitely a good thing to have just in case you are tired, and the adaptive cruise control, I'm sure, will save a lot of lives, but it is a little bit freaky, if that makes sense. I'm not exactly a big fan of having cars drive themselves completely. Like, I don't really trust computers. So we're gonna go ahead and do a kick down, and basically you will see that this engine is pretty peppy for being only 2.0 liters with such a heavy vehicle. So without further ado, let's go ahead and test. There's our mimicry of shifts, and as you can see, it actually does pretty good in terms of engine power. So again, like I said, the CVT in this one is pretty responsive. However, it does not compare with the Legacy or the Outback. I definitely think that those two are better, but again, it's sufficient for what it is. And this car, despite it lacking a few items here and there, it actually is pretty good. It's not a bad driving vehicle, but I wouldn't say it would be for me. I would prefer probably a Legacy, an Outback, or of course, you know, the new Ascents are out and they are pretty. They're just really big and very expensive, so I will have to wait till I'm a physician to even remotely think about one of those. But if anything, this thing would be really a lot of fun, I think, in a 6-speed manual, because although you are missing some items, perfectly capable of going off-roading, and basically it's a very smooth ride for what it is. So overall, I would say that this car is still a good vehicle, even if you guys are kind of okay with the fact that the car looks a little smushed. You are going to sit up pretty high, and it is going to be actually a good ride for you. So I would say this is definitely on the buy list. Anything Subaru-wise, Honda-wise, even Toyota, I sound like Scotty Kilmer, but basically I would say buy versus rent. The Nissan, definitely a lease and give it back, because it would not be a fun car to own for quite an extensive period of time. Other things that this car has, it does have traction control standard, as well as blind spot monitoring, so if someone does creep up behind you, a little light will turn on in the mirrors. But, you know, again, Subaru is very fond of these sort of vented window look, and it does help with the actual blind spots, and it also puts the mirror in a different position where it's further back, so your blind spot is also reduced significantly. So with that being said, I have to say that this car is overall a decent vehicle. Like I said, my first impressions of it, pretty decent. Would it be something I would buy? Probably not. It's not exactly my feel of car, but those of you guys who are in for a comfortable ride, you want to sit up a little bit higher, and ultimately, you know, have a good driving experience, this car definitely does provide in that aspect, so you shouldn't have any issues there. So if anybody does have any questions, by all means let me know, but in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the video, which is going to end now. So have a good one.